It's been a big day for the arts because we did our the last what I don't even know what you call it. The topping up of our new arts building, which is right next door. And so having that event on the same day as our Campbell lecture with Mel Chin is quite amazing. However, as you can hear, I actually am not doing super well. I lost my voice last night, so I am actually super excited that Associate Dean Natasha Bowden, associate professor of art and who has actually worked very hard on this organizing this event, will be the one to introduce Mel Chin and to address and thank the Campbell Foundation.
Okay, welcome everyone. I am an artist also and usually alone in my studio, so forgive the nerves at speaking at the group tonight. I want to thank you all for being here to hear from Mel Chin. I want to thank the people that are zooming in online to give Mel, a Houston native, a warm homecoming. It's great to see so many people in the audience. And I also want to say a few more important notes of thanks before I introduce our speaker tonight. So, the School of Humanities Campbell Lectures, first held in 2005, are supported by a generous gift from the Campbell Foundation. The Campbell Foundation's mission is to support nonprofits whose work creates equitable access to opportunity through education. The foundation envisions a world of justice and opportunity where every person can thrive. Founded by T.C. and Clara Campbell in 1979 in West Texas, the foundation today is directed by Rice alumni Sarah Campbell and her daughters Emily Pallett and Jody Chang. We are delighted they are joining us here tonight with other family members and friends, so thank you very much for all that you make possible. I'll say one more note about the lecture series. It invites leading scholars and artists to share their perspectives on compelling issues in the world from the perspective of the humanities and the arts. Okay, a few more notes of thanks. Thanks to the Moody staff and leadership and the Dean of Humanities staff, both for their careful attention to seeing this event and tomorrow's event through. Also, special thanks to an incredible artist in the audience herself tonight, joining us from NOLA, Jackie Summel, who helped make this evening possible as well. Thank you for putting in the good word. A short logistics piece. The program tonight will involve Mel taking the stage to speak for about an hour, followed by Q&A, and then we have a reception in the central gallery or central Moody space we hope you all will join us for following. Also, please make sure to silence your cell phones. Now for the fun part. It's a tall order to introduce the artist Mel Chin. He makes it his mission to remain undefined and unconstrained. So any attempt to frame him and his work feels pretty futile. With that, I'm going to try my level best here and try to keep it expansive. Mel Chin is a pragmatist and a poet. It isn't a duality many can pull off, but it is what makes Mel Chin's work striking, potent, and unexpected. His approach varies in response to ideas and projects, people, and places. It is reflexive and action-oriented. His medium might be land, oral histories, sculpture, technology, social policy, moving image, pencil, or paint. His work is ecological in the sense that it responds to and acts upon environmental concerns, but also in the sense that it is about relationships. Each work is a microclimate, built, sustained, and cultivated by alternate inhabitants beyond the artist himself, communities and individuals, human, plant, and animal. These works depend on trust and thrive on contact, exploring what becomes possible when connection is made. I could list the many impressive awards, grants, and honorary degrees Mel Chin has received over the years, and trust me, there are many. But here it feels more relevant, more meaningful tonight to list some of his past collaborators. Research agronomists from the United States Department of Agriculture, children from New Orleans and Flint, Michigan, video gamers, students and artists of every stripe from across the nation, romaine lettuce, alpine pennycress, dwarf corn, red fescue, dirt. These collaborations have taken form as new science, pioneering the advancement of green remediation to restore toxic earth, as political action to fight childhood lead poisoning, as social advocacy infiltrating American primetime television, as virtual reality bringing the rising seas to Times Square. This work is the product of a restless mind, troubled to do better, to do something, to strive to be more aware and more engaged. Mel Chin's work is neighborly, sympathetic, humorous, and playful. He enables affection and empathy in a world that could use more of it. I promise I'm almost done here. Currently, you can see Mel's work on view in the triennial exhibition Prospect 6 in New Orleans, titled The Future is Present, the Harbinger is Home. You can also see it in Spirit in the Land at the Coomer Museum of Art and Gardens in Jacksonville, Florida, and Breathe, Towards Climate and Social Justice at the Hammer Museum in LA. He will also have work on view at the Moody next spring, where the show from the Hammer will travel. Okay, to close it out, recently I came across a caption for one of Mel's older drawings from 2006 that reads, quote, graphite, vellum, whiteout, color pencil, 12 by 16 inches, and here's the kicker. Unspecified creative activity evidenced as voids in the sedimentary matrix of redundant and hostile reality. I'm going to read that again so we really can sit with it. Unspecified creative activity evidenced as voids in the sedimentary matrix of redundant and hostile reality. That sounds about right to me. Reading this caption made me realize how fortunate we are to have Mel Chin here tonight. As we navigate the heavy times we're living in, beset by political, personal, environmental, and bodily challenges, times of great inhumanity, hearing from Chin strikes me as timely, a threshold gift, the kind of gift that attends moments of great change and that can often bring with it transformation. So with that, please put your hands together for the artist who is in the perpetual state of becoming, Mel Chin.
Okay. I was so young. It was 1963, and the rumor was out. There was nudity in a film at the local drive-in. So I convinced my parents to take me there as the Tidwell. And it was Mondo Cane, and the nudity was supposed to be featured some footage of the great Yves Klein, who, as a result of watching this exploitation film, had a heart attack at the Cannes Film Festival. It killed him eventually. And there was that, but I don't remember any of it. None of it. Yeah. Okay. Not a word. I remember this. I remember that the last part was the description of the cargo cult. These people that made these effigies of planes, they looked to the skies for the ones that would come to them one day. I was totally into this idea of making things out of bamboo that were representing them and honoring them. They're on a tiny island, the Vanuatu Islands, and there they are, and they wait, and they have a cult called the John Frum cult. And that cult I learned about. This is a Blue 82, it is a daisy cutter bomb. And then the opportunity presented itself to make it and to replicate it in exact scale out of bamboo, very much like the cargo cult. Because it would be exact scale and describe a weapon that probably was responsible for maybe part of the 2 million people that were killed in Vietnam, the daisy cutter, with explosive ordnance to level 900 yards around, to so-called clear a field for landing a helicopter. When I learned that they were starting to drop them in Afghanistan, no longer as a clearing jungle device, but as an anti-personnel and psychological weapon, I thought it was time to make the bomb. So the bomb was made, and it's here. I liked it. It was at NOMA because of its relationship to Mr. Socrates, who advocated and questioned democracy and was poisoned with the hemlock because of it. So all these parts contributed to the information necessary to create a piece. It was at the Menil collection recently, and I'm just very proud to have it here back in Houston. So what is it about? Um, the You think that it's called Our Strange Flower of Democracy. Why is it called that? Because it struck me that, the islanders made these objects, these planes, not to wait for American planes to come back, because their isolation taught them that the greatest gift is generosity, to give what you have to another person. And to me, our greatest gift could be something like the Constitution that we could drop over Afghanistan and different places to give us some idea of the Bill of Rights, ideas. Instead, we created this: flee and live, or stay and die. So, our strange flower indeed is what we begin with. Guantanamo was a drawing, again, made during this time where I read about 17 prisoners in Guantanamo committing suicide. Why? There was never a response, or why, or how come. And sometimes a drawing is made to depict an emotional response, a visceral response to a reality that I live in. And this is after Domenichino's image in the Grotto, where is it in? Y'all been to Italy, y'all probably seen it, but it's there because I felt it was emblematic of a caress and a torture. And the hands are stretched to the edges of the paper, and it was done in memory or in consideration for the prisoners of Guantanamo. So we live in a strange world where the symbolic images of animals and things are depicted to show, I don't know if they're fighting or they're embracing, but I felt the image was necessary to convey this kind of ambiguous world of consciousness I have to inhabit. And so let's go back. This goes back, wow, this is from the first, I don't know why this is in there, but I'll tell you about it, okay? If you're in an art show, when you're young in New York City at Central Park, you want to be at the best show. And this was the Noah's Art Show. I said, I'm not going to be in any damn show with Noah's Art Show. I'm not going to do it. I won't do it. But then you get an idea, and you run to say, please, please let me be in the show. This has happened more than once. It's common to me. I think I'm so high and mighty, then something strikes me down. An idea strikes me down. And I went to the Harvard Museum of Comparative Zoology and took casts of things like the passenger pigeon, the heath hen, the steaming, and the Labrador duck in molds that could never be replicated. They're gone forever. It was called the conditions for memory. So sometimes, if you want to remember things, sometimes you present the absence, things that cannot be replaced. And I put them in Central Park in habitats they would have been found in before their death. Then you look for the word to describe this horror of extinction. And so you might find it here. I found in this book about the Carolina parakeet, because I'm living in Carolina now, one of the most prolific species on this planet that's gone extinct. So I took that dictionary and carved it. I soaked it in wax and carved it. And it's called The Bird is the Word. Because what word is there to describe things that are gone forever? I don't know. It may not be in that dictionary. Because certainly it keeps going on regardless. But you don't stop. I do things. I find out more about the bird later, and we found out what it eats us, and then we created this piece, just part one, listening. Hear that? Okay. It's only one panel of a larger piece. And this is in process. I promised some kids I would do works in progress. So, I'm not finished. Sorry. It's a bit large diamond that we covered with hand-woven patterns based on the species in question. And in each facet will be a speaker to project the sound of that, approximate sound of that animal, to create this kind of symphony, I guess, or cacophony. So we're doing constant research working with weavers to replicate the species that we find. And we're up to about 50, maybe. And because the final project will be 2 diamonds. One complete, where you can hear a composition, and the other one cracked and scattered about. Because how do you represent something? I think I'm doing this because I don't think I could ever hear the species. I wanted to hear it. I hear that. And how to wander in a field where there's one where you can maybe find beauty in a compositional creation, and one in a field where the voices are isolated and alone and desperate. So how to get the poetics of that? Anyway, I'm trying, right? Fire. This is from Devil's Night in Detroit. Remember Devil's Night? You hear about that? Yeah, you know what I hated about Devil's Night when they were talking about it? It meant that poor people, broke people, were burning up their homes and they're scary and not to be trusted. I despise this kind of description. That poverty, these people that are poor are the ones to be scared of. So I went there and started talking to people about what they were doing. And I found that they were actually regreening the parts of Detroit that were abandoned. And I asked them what they wanted and needed, and they said, well, we could use some worms and worm tea and things like that. So I came up with a concept called SPAWN, Special Projects, something like Worms in the Neighborhood, some kind of acronym, military acronym. But the idea would be you grow the worms in the bottom of the house and make the whole house push aside so you get the sunlight to sort the worms. You sort worms in sunlight. I thought it was pretty cool. But the point about doing that was to allow, to de-demonize the idea of the house. How do you undo an image of a house being burned out because of the frustration and poverty of another person? You create a surrealistic kind of dialectic from it. And so this was an attempt to do that. And then you can have a product like Devil's Night crawlers you have to sell and market for the fishing industries of Lake Michigan, right? So that was the thing. I think it was presented in PBS. And rather than me being a focus of the PBS, I asked them to shoot a fishing worm commercial. And if you ever see this, is in the first Art 21. I'm in the boat in the background, posed with a fishing rod, like an 11th century Ming Dynasty master drawing of the first description of a fishing reel. So if you catch that, I'm just keying you in. This is secret information. It doesn't have to leave the room, but that's what it's about. So this piece is the Geometry of Wrath, and it's gold leaf and oil paint on steel. And the Geometry of Wrath is a way of digital visualization. It has these, it relates to the interpretation by Christoph Luxemburg of the 44th Surah that the fundamentalist kind of routine has presented as the virgins, you know, the 72 virgins that will meet you and all that. Christoph Luxemburg began to understand it from a different source, and it may not have meant virgins. It might have meant, because it doesn't make sense. They're supposed to meet in the garden and may be the grapes and things that will enrich you and be sweet and all that. So this painting was based on information about monetary transactions, a sort of a latter-day Mark Lombardi. The size of the gold leaf is the size of the transaction, and the size of the grapes would be like Osama bin Laden. And so you can map things a different way. So I'm talking about visualizing information in more covert ways, okay? You know what I'm talking about? Again, this does not leave this audience. Y'all don't talk about this because my whole career is based on this kind of secret kind of action, okay? Got it, all right. So again, visualization, and this is another, I was invited, I'm sorry I'm trying to be casual and personable because what else am I going to do at a Campbell lecture? I was asked to do a piece for the 100th anniversary of the Panama Canal, and that's a tall order. And When the curator came to me, I said, 100 years, huh? Well, that's enough about that damn canal. With this little wound in the, I said, out of here, man. I said, I don't want to do it. But then an idea comes. Then you got to go back to the curator and act nice. And truly be nice, because you really want to be in the show, right? Because I saw something. The idea was an opportunity to describe what matters was the two bodies of water on both sides, the Atlantic and Pacific. And the challenge was to describe them in a cinematic way, to reimagine these loops of information from sound to depths of water to freezing, compiled into a composited film that could play back between two spheres. So you could walk through as you're the boat crossing the canal. So you make something that looks like the Panama kind of construction, and inside will be these spherical projection screens that could be updated with scientific data, because all the imagery was based on scientific calibrations. And so it's not like, how are you going to see that? Do you see whatever I'm talking about? Maybe not. But I think sometimes as an artist, you have to create something to compel wonder and to say, I want to know what it's about. And things would pass in the film, okay? So that's one way of serving the dynamics of information. This piece was done a long time ago when I was really into materials. It's called the Operation of the Sun Through the Cult of the Hand. It's a mythic, alchemic, scientific investigation into the origins of a word, a form, and its idea. And I spent a year research looking at all the books I could, and alchemic studies from Greek and Chinese cultures to compile this work, to isolate. When you're an artist, you think, I'm pretty damn good. I can do anything. Then you got to have that other voice that says, no, you're not. And this contradiction sets up something where I had to set up a condition that everything I did had to be backed up by some reality beyond me. So the designs are not so intuitively described. So I'm not exercising my creative genius in that way. Not that I have any. As I was exercising a method of something more important. It is framed through the ideas that make me. So we have this thing where these are like the planetary systems, and I'll show you just one. So Mercury, the principle of polarity, the orbital rebus, the shape is not created arbitrarily. It is the inner orbital space of Earth around the sun and Mercury around the sun. And it's created with all these blocks of wood because I was looking at Descartes' idea of vortices in space and replicating that inner orbital space. Look at the Mendenhall, this idea of birth canal, the bee disc from China, checking things out in the Ouroboros, the Kukele's dream of the benzene ring that is our contemporary nightmare, right? So you look at all these things and inform your creativity through this backup, okay? So this piece was called Pluto, and it was about invisibility and the discovery of the planet. And inside is actual alchemic gold I formed through consulting with Joseph Needham's Science and Civilization in China, and the concepts of the whitening, the reddening, the blackening, and this Illyrian helmet. And you can get in there and look out because it's about visuality. Now, so you spend a lot of time on something like this, right? About a year of research, a year of making. And it was my first museum show. It's kind of important, right? At the Hirshhorn. And this guard began to give tours of my piece. And when he came up to this piece, I had not discussed this piece with him. Vincent was his name. Says, okay, this is the headdress of an African king. So I heard, and I called him. And I called him to say two things. First, thank you. It is the height of an artistic creation for you to inspire someone to leave their station of saying, don't touch that, to expressing their imagination. Because very much I believe Elaine Scarry's concept of pain and imagination. Pain absolutely undoes the world because it removes the capacity of language. And imagination is the beginning of language. So first I had to thank him. I said, that's the highest compliment I could achieve as an artist. Secondly, I apologized. I said, you know, the title of the show is called The Operation of the Sun Through the Cult of the Hand. And I was so myopic, so concerned about my research and my focus, that I focused only on Chinese and Greek ideas. When the only tradition I know of that's continuum of metals and a relationship to human actions and beliefs is out of Africa. You see it in the Ogun structures and Haiti. You see, so sometimes you make a piece, you do all this trouble to inform you where you're missing. And that's okay. That's okay. Because there's always an evolutionary kind of relationship with ideas that you must have if you want to be in this thing of becoming. So this is King Leopold II. Have anyone read King Leopold's Ghost by Hutch? Okay, then you know what it's about. So this is his crest of the Free State of Africa. And King Leopold was celebrated for ending slave trade in the Congo, but he did something very horrendous. He kind of took it over and created what he called the Free State of the Congo. And this is one of his action dividends that I decided to make a painting based on this and create the framing around it like a trophy frame. But it's never presented this way. It's presented with about 700 pounds of nails driven into the surface to cover the surface. So you never should see the painting, and it's not important to see the painting because you're trying to cover this awful reality behind it. Because it is the beginning of contemporary genocide, where in the turn of the century, where 10 to 20 million Africans died, the beginning of the hand cutting, this kind of colonial subjugation of a people. So the frame has all those elements, the rubber tree plant, the hippo mouth, the agon dart is diamond dart, and the chicot, the whip made out of hippo hide that was utilized by people. So the trophy frame is decorated with elements of its violence. And so you see, the nails are driven, but they never touch the painting. Because I'm trying to suggest, like these structures, these Ikenga figurines, were made not as these magic figures as much, I feel, as striking a deal with another human being. You drive the nail to set the reality of your existence with someone else. And no nails they could have driven would prepare them to what was going to come from behind. I think we always should be in a state of preparation to what is coming. Man, this world makes me go crazy. Don't you feel like this sometimes? Yeah. Or you could be like Mr. Faulkner, going haywire. Or, I don't know who that is. But that may be F. Scott Fitzgerald. These writers going cray-cray. And you create a collage. What the hell? You create a collage. And there they are in party mode, right? Why did I do this? I think this is the Funkenwag Standard Universal Encyclopedia. I found one in my parents' drawer after they died. I was cleaning up. And I always remember the Funkenwag because we lived in the 5th Ward of Houston, and our store was not of the economy where we could carry the Funkenwag. I always wanted an encyclopedia. I was constantly curious, but they didn't carry it. So when I finally found one volume, and I started to make something out of it. I took all the images out of the book and started making these collages. Because I felt that, and I kept every page, by the way. Don't tell me I'm a book destroyer because I saved every part. If you want to put it all back together, go ahead, okay? You're not going to catch me. I know you. And there would be like the other envy. There was no appetite for island architecture. string that flies cannot be untied. This is the threat. There are never empty threats. That's an Afghan family in the crosshair. And this is that obscure, it's not object, it's that obscure organism of desire. And it's comprised of wigs of men and sea creatures sniffing out men without hair, I guess, and phyto-related organisms. They're just checking each other out. You see what I'm saying? And so these opportunities, there are ways to describe your politics, your emotions, your political orientation. I don't know what this means, but through collage, right? So the Funko-Wag was like 524 images created from every page of the book, where it was cut up and reconfigured. Because I was trying to make something, the information in those books and the captions were gone, they're dead from 1953. But the idea that you can make something alive again through contemporary art was the point. I could make it alive again, and it's a tribute to my parents, and it's a Funko-Wag. And it's the way it looked. Every volume is cataloged, and you can, and it was not digitally, it was old digital, cut by hand and glued by hand, so that there would be no repetition. So, funky and waggy, okay? Do y'all see the film Derrida? Y'all see that film? I know y'all went to it, you're just shy. Amy Kaufman asked Derrida, have you read all the books in here? He said, no, only 4 of them, but I read those very, very carefully. And people laughed at that film when he said that. And I was outraged. I said, what the hell did he mean by that? I met Derrida in '96 at a dinner where we discussed it was impossible for him to be at a dinner at this other place, and he was at the dinner, and he agreed, so I won that one. But this got me. And then he dies, and then I'm confused, but I have a dream. Works come from dreams. I was on a boat. I don't sail. I don't do this. And I saw a nautical compass floating around. And I looked at that compass, and pretty soon the directions and the words and their markings turned into pages of book, roiling and boiling into an image. I understood. It was always for books. To seek direction, he was in constant motion in the world of ideas, as we all should be. And you have these ideas from Husserl or the Bible to Marx, all flowing in. And all ideas should be discussed. And they constitute this ocean of navigation for you to be in. Then I understood. And plus, I went back and found images, photographs of every book that I could find in his library of that, and replicated them in silver point. So you can have this kind of French, those French white book kind of looking thing. And even the architecture is based on King's College, the cathedral, because at the time they didn't want to give him an honorary doctorate. I have a few myself. And so I had to fight for Derrida's place. And it's called Circumfessional Hymenal C for Jackie D. So there you have it. That's what it looks like. I was young once too. I have a long history with clay. And this is a salt kiln. This is from '74. I was doing this Western Dynasty out of this. I was so nutty, I became the janitor of the pot shop. You know how hard it is to clean a pot shop? I was like totally cycloceramic and into it, right? But I created these pieces, and I thought that's all I wanted to do, but I got so deeply into clay, I realized it didn't have to always be clay. And so I came back to Houston, and one of the first pieces in the '70s was this dirt-related earthwork. I was trying to comprise all 3 things at once: conceptualism, minimalism, kineticism in one piece, economy, right? So if you step on one side, you react to the other, and you have this psychological relationship with space. And then I kept going with this dirt thing, and then the revival field. It was a crazy time in the '90s. After that exhibition at the Hirshhorn, I was going down the elevator, and I hear that damn voice again. And it's asking me a question. what do you love to do? I said, well, I love making things with my hands, making these symbolic gestures. I love the informational context and how I can bridge them. It is a real challenge. I love it, love it, love it. And it said, then stop. I walked out of the elevator and didn't make anything for 6 months and stayed away from museums, galleries, my studio. I didn't pick up a hammer. But I began a search. I wandered through ideas again and found this article. It was the Whole Earth Review. And it had this article by Terence McKenna, a psilocybin expert, who mentioned plants could clean heavy metals out of soil. And by the way, he was wrong about that, but at least it launched this kind of belief in me. But I was driven by this concept. And you should have seen me. I go to those art parties, you had to show at the museum, everything's pretty groovy. But now I have been working, and they look at you. And I'm walking around like that guy in The Graduate. I was neither Miss Robinson or Dustin Hoffman. I was the guy walking around saying, plants, plants, the future is plants. And they said, please go back to work. Because I felt something that was beautiful and poetic about this idea. But the other source was this obligation to make it real, involved being careful. Because once you involve other individuals, the pragmatism was demanded. But Revival Field was eventually launched. It was a replicated field test at St. Paul, Pig's Eye landfill. And it's not just about doing a little formal garden, and it's not about 3 years of soil testing, and it's not about this amazing plant called Talaspia rotundifolium that we used. It was not even the harvest there that was about. It was information. It was scientific proof that plants could do it. So Revival Field is actually important because it's a project that confirmed science. And I'm happy to say, after all these years, that some of the first scientific and sponsored by the US government field trials are now being started with plant remediation. So you did something, right? And this article in Science kind of opened up the gate, because this is about when the NEA rejected it. And the chair of the NEA rejected it. And I went and argued in front of the chairman, and he reversed his position. And he reversed his position because I brought the example, I mentioned Elaine Scarry. I talked about this pain and imagination. I said, now, his name was John Frommeyer. I said, John, I said, this is what the world is. It's being unmade and remade. But if you're in the camp of art, imagination, where there's a duck flying over a pond, a gay man's blood and a flag, whatever it is, or this project that you cannot see and has this invisible aesthetic, it's in the camp of art. Which side are you on? And he turned around and came back and said, I'm going to reverse my veto. Then I learned about DC. He said, now how are we going to write that press release to make it your fault? So this is a white draped cloth, and more relationship about soil and place is a piece called Rinder. It was a white draped cloth. And you walk in and you see eyes of, let's say, a US president looking through this mask, maybe weepy eyes. Oh. And it's actually Bush's eyes, and you start seeing what it's about. And the frame is made out of steel, based on the pattern of an Apache attack helicopter used in Gaza. And you look at this wall as encrusted like bits of flesh. And they're all made with encaustic, like the great Fayum portraits that you can find in the Manil. And they littered this place. And it's actually the West Bank turned in its side. This was the information from B'Tselem in 2003 of how ethnic cleansing was being mobilized in the West Bank. And all the bits of flesh are the last strongholds of the Palestinian people back then. So, this is the installation view. Anyway, these quotes, how am I? Oh, I'm okay. This word. So this is driven by these two quotes. I can read them to you. And among those wretches who heard us declare that the ritual of history was at an end? Might there not be other suicide bombers who will come to tell the nations, you ignored us while we were alive? Well, here we are dead. Our death didn't interest you as long as it occurred on our own territory. Well, now we throw it at your feet in the fire that consumes you. That we're invisible as long as we live, visible suicides is what we will become. This is Bernard Levy's approximation of a Tamil suicide bomber. And then, very inspiring and noteworthy, is James Baldwin. Sentimentality, the ostentatious parading of excessive and spurious emotion is the mark of dishonesty, the inability to feel. The wet eyes of the sentimentalist betray his aversion to experience, his fear of life, his arid heart, and is always, therefore, the signal of a secret and violent inhumanity, the mask of cruelty. The piece called Render was just trying to describe where I stood on this earth in relationship to what was going on at that time. I was neither a suicide bomber nor a person of power, but art sometimes must be made to show the conditions we exist in. Katrina hit New Orleans in 2005. And I tried to help, and I was stunned because I was incapable of responding. And not because of the physical, the mold, and all the rebuilding. It was because I was interviewing people, and their social and psychological framework was so destroyed that I had no choice. I didn't know what to do. But I found this map. And it's about lead in the soil. And I found out that what this map meant is 30 to 50% of the inner city childhood population of New Orleans were poisoned with lead before the storm. And so we built a safe house. In this house, we built this vault to capture some drawings. And the grounds in front of this house are 3,000 parts per million. It is unsafe at 400 parts per million here in the US, maybe 100 parts per million in other countries. And 3 children emerged out of the house poisoned forever. So I chose this house. And then we had an armored truck created. And we went 20,000 miles. And we collected about 300,000 drawings from across the country, because every city that had this problem. And then we ended up in DC. And we had politicians come address this issue for us. And Nancy was not the only one. We met Republicans and Democrats to present the case. And then finally we gave it to the Brooklyn Museum, where it sits today. 500,000 drawings sits there as evidence of a creative search, 1 drawing per child who believed maybe their voice might be worth something. And I have to say that after all this, and all those meetings in Congress, that yes, a bill is on the table that's bipartisan, called the Less Safe Housing Act for Children, but no one has signed it. So we talk about children, we talk about this belief, and we talk about how they should be protected, but do we really mean it? This is our house. So Helene came through the Cane River, and it left its own bomb in its wake. And places like this had been there maybe 100 years, were gone, they're wiped out, not mention families and things. And our whole association of the place was changed. And roads impassable. And I had this piece to get to New Orleans, and we did it anyway, you know. We created part 1. If you see it, it's not done. I publicly stating it's a work in progress. But it's a homage to the women workers of the pool that had helped build this corporate reality, right? And what credit do they get? So that's just one set of chairs. There'll be 15 more coming, don't worry. But you know, after the storm, we immediately set up communications, my wife Helen and I, and set up places to supplies, and we started to meet people. People started coming in to communicate first with their families they haven't heard from in 6 days, and we created a community of people we didn't know. And I felt tremendous gratefulness for that the people I've never talked to, neighbors I talked to. And I became very sad. I became very sad. I was grateful for all that, but I was not hurt. I was not hurt. And the people were getting along, and we were talking, and we had support, and we had care and mutual aid. And did this drawing of a child. His name is Muhammad Hani al-Zahar. He was 5 months old. And he was destroyed by this 2,000-pound bomb during this period. So while I am safe and I'm okay, I'm reminded of my relationship as an American, that I am complicit in my support for this kind of destruction. So in a way, we talk about the unexamined life is not worth living. But how do you examine it when you're constantly being robbed of the tools to do that? I think it's the obligation of the arts and the humanities to go and create those tools, to begin a process. The only way to heal is to admit what you're responsible for. And as an American, I am complicit in a year of destruction where people have not given the mutual aid or support or camaraderie of the world. So I'm deeply stricken. I continue to be. I make strides as a person to continue to fight or create, not fight, just create conditions where maybe the climate can be adjusted, where we can address these things. This piece, some of it might come here. It's got eye of. Its fancy name means interpretation of vision. And interpretation of vision was a weirdo project for the Hammer, where I interviewed people of things that happened to them and painted and pretend like Frida Kahlo's style, like Rotopos. And there would be events, supernatural events, that I would not question. I would show total empathy for what they were talking about. Because when I'm talking about this transformation of myself, I think you have to begin with yourself. You can't depend on others to make a work of art, to make people become empathetic. I think the obligation is to begin with oneself. And I started with my art to listen to people and not judge them, and do the best work I could of what had happened to them, and believe about their transformative experience. So there's a description of the event and the transformative experience on the left. And I would clear it with them. It's weird to be an artist for so many years and send something to somebody and they say, well, that's not right. And change it till it was right. This guy saw Bigfoot, Jim, and I didn't do Bigfoot right. I did it till it was right. And then I asked him what was his transformation. He said it was confirmation. And confirmation, I said, what color is confirmation? I had my mind set. It's going to be purple and yellow. It's going to be square. It's going to be, he said it's spherical, and it's green and blue. So we go. But there was a moment. It's number 27 on this panel, And I asked him for a number from 1 to 35. He said 27. So we caught up with each other. This is a vision in the street where a woman walks amongst power lines in the rain, and how the transformation was described by Emily as this permeable wall between black and white, like a curtain of ideas that float between. The poetics can be revealed if you listen to others and respect the point of view. Okay, we're in Texas tomorrow night. I will speak of guns, I promise. I will talk about division, promise. And I will go into this thing called the Gala Committee. All right? Top secret. So anyway, this is just a warning. This is a warm-up, a warning of what's going to go down. Y'all don't have to come. Y'all can just boycott whatever you want to do, but it will be done, okay? So anyway, I want to give time for Q&A, so how are we doing? All right.